My wife announced that her libido had completely disappeared. She called me clingy and pathetic, adding that real men do not beg for attention like desperate children. According to her, if I were truly attractive, she would want me. In the end, I relieved her of the need to worry about a husband, and now she is the one begging me for forgiveness. This story developed over the past year, and now I am ready to share it. I am 36 years old. I own a construction company that I built from absolute scratch. My childhood was spent in a trailer park. My father abandoned us when I was 8, and my mother had to work 2 jobs to feed the family. By 15, I was already working on construction sites, lying to employers about my age to earn money. My entire youth was spent in endless work. While my peers were having fun and playing video games, I was grinding 70 hours a week, attending night courses to get a contractor's license, and saving every penny. Until I was 29, I lived in a modest studio, drove an old beat-up truck for 12 years, and ate instant noodles more often than I care to remember. The efforts paid off. At 28, I took a loan of $15,000 and started my own business. Now I have 47 people under me, and the annual income is about $2,300,000. We do everything from building private mansions to commercial renovation. I am not saying this to brag, but so you understand why the betrayal hit me so hard. 4 years ago, I met Jessica at a charity auction. She worked as a marketing coordinator with a salary of $35,000 a year, but she carried herself as if she earned 10 times that. This should have been the first red flag, but she was dazzling and seemed genuinely impressed by my path to success. We hit it off immediately. She was charming, funny, and for the first time in my life, I felt that someone appreciated my hard work. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. All that time, she was a loving and supportive partner. Our wedding took place 2 years ago and was the happiest day of my life. I bought us a beautiful suburban house for $485,000 with 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. For her birthday, I gave her a new BMW X5 worth $65,000. When she wanted to quit her job to focus on herself and maybe start her own business someday, I supported her. My income was more than enough for a comfortable life for 2. The first year and a half of marriage were perfect. We had great intimacy. She was affectionate and caring. We would talk for hours about the future. She brought me lunches to the job sites and bragged about me to her friends. I felt like the luckiest man in the world. However, 10 months ago, everything changed literally overnight. Jessica, who used to want intimacy 4 or 5 times a week, reduced it to absolute 0. Everything disappeared. Hugs, goodbye kisses, even simple touches. It was as if someone had flipped a switch. To any of my attempts to show affection, she would reply with a rehearsed phrase about something being physically wrong with her. She blamed it on a hormonal imbalance and claimed that the doctor predicted many long months of treatment. At first, I was completely understanding. I offered to find the best specialists, pay for any treatment, and even go to family therapy. She called this sweet, but insisted that her doctor advised against unnecessary intervention so as not to worsen the situation. I am not a doctor, so I trusted her. But soon, doubts began to gnaw at me. For a woman suffering from hormonal problems and feeling unattractive, Jessica started ordering too many packages from Victoria's Secret. She spent hundreds of dollars on expensive lingerie, explaining it as her doctor's recommendation for emotional healing. Then came an obsession with the gym. Before, she barely exercised. Now she spent every morning there for 2 hours, attended yoga, and hired a personal trainer named Jake. She constantly mentioned him in conversations, bragging about her progress. After workouts, she looked unusually energetic and radiant. The changes continued. She started wearing professional makeup, even to go grocery shopping, visited the hairdresser twice a week, and began wearing revealing clothes she had never worn before. Girls' nights out increased to 3 or 4 times a week, and she would come home at 2 or 3 in the morning. She claimed that social support from friends helped her take her mind off her physical ailments. When asked exactly where they had been, she answered vaguely. What struck me was that she had energy for everything except interacting with her husband. At home, she acted as if I were contagious. For 10 months, I lived in an atmosphere of rejection, watching her become more active and more focused on her appearance. The truth began to surface by chance. At a hardware store, I ran into an old school friend, Tommy. He owns several entertainment venues, including a popular club called The Lounge. Tommy asked how my wife was doing, and I mentioned her health problems. He looked extremely uncomfortable. He told me he had seen her at his club last week and the week before. She was a regular and was spending time with a tall man whose arms were covered in tattoos. According to him, they were not behaving like mere acquaintances. They sat very close, constantly whispered, and touched each other. That night, when Jessica came home at 1:30, I asked how her evening had gone. She casually lied that she had been drinking coffee with a friend at a place on Oak Street. But Tommy's club is in a completely different location, and coffee is definitely not the main drink there. After that conversation, I began paying closer attention to the details. She would spend 2 hours getting ready for supposedly quiet get-togethers with friends, using the best makeup and the most provocative outfits. Yet when I suggested going to a restaurant, she would refuse, citing fatigue and feeling unwell. Examining the bank statements revealed an even darker picture. Large sums at lingerie stores, dinners at restaurants we never visited together, and taxi rides to neighborhoods where none of her friends lived. The breaking point was a receipt found in her jeans pocket. It was a bill from an upscale hotel downtown, where a room costs at least $200 a night. The date matched the evening she claimed to be too exhausted because of a flare-up of her illness. According to the Times, she stayed there until midnight, enjoying a full dinner for two with expensive dishes and dessert. When I showed her that receipt, she concocted a story about a colleague named Maria, who supposedly needed support because of a divorce. But there was one problem. Jessica had quit her job more than a year ago. When I started asking follow-up questions, she became tangled in the details. At that moment, I finally realized that my wife was leading a double life and lying to my face. I made a decision. If she wanted to play games with a man who built a multi-million-dollar business from nothing, she would have to learn a hard lesson. I did not start a fight immediately. Instead, I began to act like a businessman, strategically and methodically. First, I called the best divorce attorney in the state, known for his ruthlessness in protecting assets. I explained the situation and provided evidence of suspicious spending. The lawyer confirmed that with documented proof of infidelity and misuse of marital funds, she would have little to stand on. We had a prenuptial agreement that I had insisted on signing before the wedding. Jessica did not even read it at the time, believing she would never need it. The attorney emphasized that gathering evidence of infidelity and financial deceit would be key. Then I hired a private investigator who had previously helped me vet employees. His task was simple: follow Jessica and document every move she made during the times she claimed to be sick. Simultaneously, I focused on protecting my finances. Without breaking any laws, I opened accounts in 3 different banks and began redistributing funds to safeguard what I had built my entire life. I also started making copies of all our important documents: financial statements, insurance policies, property deeds, tax returns, and business records. I hid everything in a safety deposit box that Jessica did not know about. If it came to a scandal, I wanted to be ready for any development. The hardest part was acting at home as if nothing were wrong. Every evening, returning to the person who was lying to my face and spending my money on her secret life. I watched her dress up for girls' nights, knowing she was most likely meeting some guy who was laughing at my gullibility. Jessica had no idea that every word she spoke was being recorded, and every suspicious expense tracked. Every time she came home late and smelled of another man's cologne, I made a note. I bought a small digital voice recorder and secretly recorded our conversations, especially those moments when she explained where she had been and what she had done. I was building a library of lies that would destroy her reputation in court. "How was your evening with the girls?" I would ask when she came home after midnight. "Oh, you know how it is," she would reply, launching into detailed stories about a new place on Market Street and walks downtown. She fabricated stories about her friend Jennifer's troubles with her boyfriend. All of it was false and was being saved for future use. The private investigator called me after only 5 days of surveillance. "Your wife isn't even trying to hide," he said. "Gathering evidence will be easier than I thought." The report started coming daily: photographs, timestamps, and detailed descriptions of Jessica's actions. On the first day, she left the house at 6:30 p.m., supposedly for yoga. Instead, she went to an apartment complex on the other side of town, where she spent 3 hours. The detective photographed her entering and leaving the building. She was dressed nothing like for sports. On the second day, another girls' night turned out to be a dinner at an expensive restaurant with the same man. In the pictures, they were holding hands and behaving like a couple in love on a romantic date. On the third day, Jessica claimed she was going to the doctor to discuss her hormone levels. Instead, she spent the entire day in that same apartment. The detective noted that she took an overnight bag and did not leave until the next morning. The real windfall came with the audio recordings. Jessica and her lover liked to talk on the balcony, and the neighboring units were close enough for a directional microphone to catch every word. The very first recording filled me with rage. My wife's voice came through clearly. "I can't believe how easy this is. He actually thinks I have medical problems affecting my libido. How naive can you be?" A male voice, presumably her companion, laughed. "And he suspects nothing at all?" "Not a thing. I tell him it's hormones, and he believes it. He feels guilty for wanting physical intimacy and doesn't ask any more questions. It's perfect." "What about your constant absences? Doesn't he ask where you're going?" "Please. I just say I'm going to a girls' night or a support group for the sick. He's so focused on being the understanding husband that he would never think to check. Besides, he works so much he's hardly ever home, and he pays for everything. The car, the house, the shopping. It's the perfect setup. I have the financial security of marriage without the boring domestic life. I live like a free woman while someone else pays the bills." They both laughed as if it were the funniest joke in the world. I had to stop the recording and leave the office to cool down. My wife was not just cheating, she was mocking my trust and calling me naive for being a decent husband. But the detective had more information. He followed them to restaurants, hotels, and even a weekend trip to a resort 2 hours from the city. Jessica told me she was going to a medical center to work with specialist doctors. In reality, she spent 3 days in a luxurious suite with her lover, paying for everything with my credit card. Room service, spa treatments, couples massages, all confirmed by receipts and photos. The detective also identified her companion. His name was Jake, the personal trainer. He had a shady past, married, 2 children, though living separately, and had financial and legal problems. "There's something else interesting," the detective told me. "This guy seems to specialize in married women. I found evidence of at least 2 other affairs over the last few years, and both were with clients from his gym. Jessica was not special to him. She was just another in a list of married women he picked for flings. But the most damning evidence came from a coffee shop where they were planning their next trip. The funniest thing is that he's still trying to be romantic," Jessica was saying. "He suggests dates or trips, and I just say I'm not up for it because of my health. He looks disappointed but never argues. It's kind of sad, actually." "And what's the plan for the future?" asked Jake. "You can't keep this up forever." "Why not? As long as he believes the illness story, he won't get suspicious. Men don't understand anything about women's health anyway. I could drag this out for years. He's too trusting and too busy with his business to notice anything. And even if he does suspect something, what will he do? Hire a private investigator?" They both laughed at the absurdity of the thought. Turning off the recording, I sat in my office for a long time, staring out the window. Jessica had turned our marriage into a complete farce and was so confident in her impunity that she joked about the possibility of being caught. But she was wrong. I had hired a professional, and now I had everything I needed to destroy her. While the detective continued gathering evidence, I began preparing what Jessica would soon recognize as the biggest mistake of her life. Owning a construction company in a mid-sized city gives you many connections. City officials, other business owners, bankers, insurance agents, almost every significant person in the community. Jessica had no idea what kind of influence I wielded. First, I went after Jake. A few calls to acquaintances in the fitness industry revealed interesting details. It turned out he had been fired from 2 previous gyms for inappropriate relationships with clients. At his current club, the rules were strict, but so far, he had managed not to get caught. I anonymously sent the gym's management photographs and evidence of his relationship with Jessica, mentioning possible reputational risks for the establishment. Management showed great interest in this information. Also, through a mutual acquaintance, I got in touch with Jake's wife, with whom he no longer lived. I did not tell her about the affair directly. I only casually mentioned that a certain Jessica was looking for Jake and asking about his schedule and place of residence. I let her put the pieces together herself. But the real masterpiece was what I did with the credit card expenses. Every expensive dinner, hotel, and romantic getaway was documented. Since the card was joint, I had the legal right to share this data with anyone. I compiled a detailed dossier, The detective's reports, bank statements, restaurant bills. Copies of this file were delivered to Jake's gym, his wife, and other people who might find it interesting. Meanwhile, at home, I continued playing the role of the perfect husband. When Jessica returned from another treatment, I asked how it went. "It was just what I needed," she replied with a satisfied look. "The doctor thinks the therapy is showing results. I'm finally starting to understand what was wrong with me." "That's wonderful, dear. I'm proud of you for taking care of your health." Inside, I was counting down the days until the collapse of her world. The first blow came with Jake's firing. Having direct evidence of a trainer's relationship with a married client was exactly the kind of problem clubs try to avoid. He was let go immediately, with the understanding that he would receive no recommendations for future work. That evening, Jessica came home in a panic. "Something weird happened at the gym," she said. "Jake was fired for violating rules. They didn't give me details, but he's banned from the premises." "That's terrible," I replied, feigning sympathy. "Did he say what it was about?" "No, he was in shock. He says it came out of nowhere, and management didn't explain anything. It's so unfair. He's a great trainer." Yes, I had no doubt he knew how to train. The second blow came when Jake's wife showed up at his apartment with a lawyer and a stack of evidence. It turned out she had suspected something for a long time, but she never had any leads until I provided them. She immediately filed for divorce, claiming all his assets. Jessica became more and more nervous, constantly texting someone and jumping at every phone call. She began making excuses to leave the house at strange times, supposedly for emotional relief after her treatments. But I knew she was trying to find out what had happened to her lover and whether their affair had been exposed. "Is everything okay?" I would ask after her return. "You look tense." "It's the procedures," she would answer. "There are hard days. The doctor says mood swings during hormone therapy are normal." Of course, I was sure her doctor had told her many interesting things. The final blow was the most powerful. I saved it for dessert, because I wanted Jake to be completely isolated and desperate before the end. He had serious debts to very dangerous people. This was not just about credit card debt, but the kind of obligations that, if unmet, bring extremely severe consequences. Losing his job meant Jake could no longer make payments, and the people he owed money to do not offer payment plans. Around town, people whispered that Jake had suddenly left for family reasons, but everyone in the know understood the real reason. He was hiding from those who do not accept excuses like, "I'll pay later." Jessica was beside herself with worry, though she could not admit to me what was wrong. She would disappear for hours, supposedly for medical appointments or therapy sessions. But I knew she was just driving around town, trying to find out where Jake had gone. "How is your treatment progressing?" I would ask innocently. "It's complicated," she would reply with an exhausted, intense look. "The doctor is adjusting the therapy plan, and it's causing emotional side effects. I might have to take a break from the treatment." Translated into plain language, her lover had vanished, and she did not know what to do. I waited until Jessica was completely abandoned by her admirer before making my final move. There is no point in destroying someone who is already crushed. I wanted her to feel safe again and regain her confidence before I pulled the rug out from under her. I chose a Friday evening for the decisive conversation. Jessica had just returned from another support group, meaning aimless drives looking for Jake. She seemed to be in good spirits, probably having convinced herself that she had managed to keep her secret despite everything that had happened. "Hey, honey," I said, sitting down next to her on the couch. "I've been thinking a lot about your health, and I really want to help in any way I can." Her face lit up with genuine relief. "That's so sweet of you. I know how hard this has been for both of us, and I appreciate your patience. Actually, I've been researching your condition and found something very interesting." I took out a thick folder I had prepared earlier. "I think you'll find it fascinating." Jessica looked curious, expecting articles about hormone therapy or treatment methods. "Did you know," I continued, opening the folder, "that women with severe hormonal imbalances usually do not buy $3,200 worth of lingerie over 10 months? The smile vanished instantly from her face. I began laying credit card statements on the coffee table. Every purchase at Victoria's Secret was highlighted in yellow marker. Furthermore, most women with libido issues do not spend $1,800 on romantic dinners at expensive restaurants. I placed the receipts next to the statements. The amounts on those meals exceeded most people's monthly grocery budgets. "Honey, I can explain everything. Please don't interrupt, I said calmly. I am not finished with my presentation yet. I took out my phone and played the balcony recording. Jessica's voice filled the living room. She was bragging about how easy it was to manipulate me and calling me naive for trusting her unconditionally. Jessica turned pale. She looked like she might faint. Where did you get that recording? From the private investigator I hired 2 months ago. I placed a stack of surveillance photos on the table. It turns out that women with medical diagnoses usually do not spend 3 days a week at their boyfriend's apartment. The pictures documented everything. Jessica entering and leaving Jake's building, kissing in restaurant parking lots, and walking hand in hand like a happy couple. But here's what's really interesting, I continued, pulling out more documents. My lawyer analyzed our finances. It turns out that over the last 10 months, you spent $47,000 of my money on clothes, dinners, hotels, spa treatments, and weekend trips. Essentially, you completely financed your extramarital relationship while rejecting your own husband. Jessica burst into tears, but it did not move me. These were not tears of remorse. They were tears of someone caught red-handed and realizing the scale of the disaster. It's not what you think. It is exactly what I think. You turned our marriage into a joke where I pay the bills while you live like a free woman. You made me feel guilty for wanting intimacy with my own wife. You used my trust and my money to sponsor an affair, hiding behind a made-up illness. I stood up and walked to the window, looking at the yard I had worked so hard for. But here's the thing, Jessica. I built a multi-million-dollar business not because I am naive or let people take advantage of me. You just tried to deceive the wrong guy. What do you want from me? She whispered. Want? I don't want anything from you anymore. This is not a negotiation or a discussion about how to fix things. I am simply explaining what will happen next. I laid out another folder of legal documents. The divorce petition was filed this morning. You will be served on Monday during your yoga class. If you actually go there and not use it as another cover. Her eyes widened in shock. You can't just divorce me. We can work this out. I'll stop seeing him right now. Stop seeing whom? Your lover skipped town 2 weeks ago. Apparently, when you are married, have kids, and owe dangerous people money, a romance with another man's wife quickly becomes a burden. The look of pain and confusion on Jessica's face told me she had not known about Jake's marital status. He had played her, just as she had played me. The house is in my name only, I continued. You have 30 days to find other housing. I suggest you start immediately because the clock started ticking this morning. You can't kick me out. I have rights. I'm your wife. Actually, you have no rights. Take a look at the prenup you signed without reading. Marital infidelity forfeits any claim to alimony or asset division. My lawyer says it is one of the most airtight contracts he has ever seen. I had insisted on that agreement after hearing horror stories from other business owners. Jessica had signed it readily, thinking it was a mere formality. The credit cards are being canceled tonight. The BMW will be repossessed Monday morning because technically it is a company vehicle for tax purposes. Your phone is on my corporate plan, so that service will be cut off too. Jessica was sobbing uncontrollably, but it did not stir any sympathy in me, as it might have a week earlier. Please, you don't understand. I made a mistake. I was confused and stupid, but I love you. We can fix this. Love me? I almost laughed. You spent 10 months mocking my trust behind my back. You spent my money on another man, making me out to be a predator for wanting affection from my own wife. That is not love. That is sociopathic behavior. I never wanted it to turn out like this. It started as harmless flirting and got out of control. Harmless flirting does not include weekend getaways and $47,000 in expenses on a lover. And it certainly does not include recordings where you laugh about how easy it is to manipulate your husband. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, then turned around one last time. Oh, and one more thing, Jessica. You should know that your Jake was married and had 2 children. His wife received copies of all the hotel receipts, proving how you helped destroy her family. She is also filing for divorce and will take everything he has left, though there is not much left given his debts. The look of pure horror and realization of betrayal on Jessica's face was priceless. Jake had deceived her, just as she had deceived me. But she had been too self-absorbed to notice in time. Wait, she shouted after me. We can make a deal. I will do anything to make this right. I'll sign any papers. I'll agree to any terms. I stopped and looked at her one last time. 10 months ago, you could have fixed this by honestly telling me how you felt. 5 months ago, you could have ended the affair and begged for forgiveness. Last month, you could have confessed and hoped for mercy. I am confessing now. I'll tell you everything. But you chose to lie every chance you had to come clean. You made me feel like I was asking for too much, just by wanting simple warmth from my wife. You turned our union into a financial transaction, where I paid for everything while you gave your energy to someone else. I opened the door and stepped outside. Now you will have to live with the consequences of your choices, and I will live without them. Please, I am begging you. I have nowhere to go. I can't support myself. Then maybe you should not have spent the last 10 months practicing being alone while staying married for the money. I got into my truck and drove away, leaving Jessica crying on the steps of the house I had bought for our future. The divorce was finalized in 4 months. My lawyer said that was unusually fast. Jessica tried everything. She claimed emotional abuse, demanded support, tried to challenge the prenup by saying she signed it under duress. Nothing worked. The evidence was irrefutable, and the agreement was ironclad. She went through 3 lawyers, but no one could get around the fact of infidelity and misuse of marital funds on her lover. The recordings of her bragging about her manipulations did not help her case either. In the end, Jessica left with her personal belongings, her clothes, and $3,000 from our joint account. That was everything. She tried to sue for the BMW, calling the car a gift, but the lawyer proved it was company property. She claimed a share of the business, but the prenup protected assets acquired before the marriage. The house, the construction company, the retirement accounts, the equipment, everything remained with me. Jessica moved back in with her parents in their 1-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. The last I heard, she is working in a store at a mall, making $12 an hour, and driving an old 2008 Honda Civic with 180,000 miles on it. Jake never returned to our city. His wife cleaned him out in the divorce and moved back to her home state with the kids. Rumor has it he is washing dishes somewhere in Nevada and still looking over his shoulder, afraid of the people he owes money to. I sold the old house and built a new one, from my own design, using my own crew. It is my dream home, and no one will live there until they earn it. 6 months after the divorce, I started dating again. I met a woman who runs her own accounting firm. She has never asked me to pay for anything. The difference is incredible. To be with someone who invests in the relationship, not just consumes. Jessica tried to contact me several times through mutual friends, insisting that she had learned her lesson and wanted to fix things. Once, she even came to my construction site, begging for a chance. I know what I did was wrong, she said, but I have changed. I realize what I lost, and I am willing to spend my whole life making it up to you. I looked at her and saw a person who only regrets being caught and losing her comfortable lifestyle. If I had not hired the detective, she would still be leading a double life and laughing at my stupidity. You don't regret what you did, I told her. You regret what it cost you. Those are 2 very different things. I made sure that everyone in our social circle knew the truth, not out of revenge, but so that people would know who they were dealing with if she tried to manipulate them too. Some thought I was too harsh. They said everyone makes mistakes and deserves forgiveness. But here's the thing. Jessica did not make a mistake. She made hundreds of deliberate choices over 10 months to deceive and rob me, systematically destroying our marriage. I gave her everything: trust, money, love, and support during a fabricated crisis. In return, I got lies, betrayal, and mockery. She decided to play with another person's life and well-being, treating marriage like a financial transaction where she gets all the benefits and I get all the responsibility. She just chose the wrong man for her games.